welcome to episode 3 of The Cutting Edge with JackKnife. I got Big Red Matt with me today, and I got a special guest joining us, Frank Curto of Empire Sports Media. He is our former editor at Elite Sports New York, so anytime I made a grammatical error or a error with stats, he was the one I would panic texting, like, Frank, you gotta help me. But now Frank, he also writes for Forever Blue Shirts and runs the Ranger Proud Facebook page. How are you doing, gentlemen?
I'm doing great.
I'm hanging in. Implant is settling, so apologies on the mispronunciations or muffled sounding words.
Yeah, speaking of pronunciations, my friend Alex Glaude heard you say habituance the last time you were on one of our regular episodes. And here's the thing, he's French Canadian, like he's a big Habs fan. He wants to reach through the computer and strangle you. How is it? It's habitants or something.
It's
like
habitants.
Right? I don't know. He's probably gonna strangle me after hearing that. But anyway, okay.
Well, I hope the habituants do it for his sake.
All right, so don't lie. No one saw this. Okay, we probably saw one team in it coming, but no one saw the Habs going, which I think we're going to just jump into it right away. Who was the biggest surprise to you two? And I think we're all going to say the Habs, right? The fact they made it this far. I'll let you go first, Frank.
Yeah, I mean, based on who's left, I would say the Habs, though I think they were a very underappreciated team throughout the playoffs. I mean, this team was built for the Stanley Cup Finals. 4 lines deep, great penalty killing, great goaltending. So it was a surprise. To me, it was a surprise how much they dominated the Golden Knights, especially power play and special team wise. I think the Knights kind of bit themselves in the ass rotating goaltenders. I don't believe in that in the playoffs. Play the hot guy until he loses instead of this alternating. I think that really did them in. On the other side, the Islander Lightning series was a great series, regardless that the Islanders didn't score goals in the last 2 games. There was a continuation battle from last year's semifinals. So definitely the Canadiens would be the surprise.
Absolutely. I mean, if it's not the Canadiens, I really don't know what you've been watching, because they entered not just as the 4th seed, but as the actual lowest seeded team in the playoffs, seeded below 2 teams, the defending Western Conference champ Dallas and the New York Rangers. And it's kind of amazing that they were able to, I guess, survive through the regular season, because they clearly are built for the playoffs, one. But it's amazing that their biggest concern was getting there in the first place, because that's what their record says. Price is turning the clock backwards, and they kind of play the same way the Islanders play, but arguably better and arguably more effective, because their guys are more sizable, especially on defense. So hands down, it has to be the Canadiens. Has to be.
Absolutely. I mean, we were all ready to write them off once they were matched up with Toronto, but Toronto still has their issues getting past the first round. Then they absolutely steamrolled the Winnipeg Jets. And Vegas, I don't know if you could say maybe they were tired after facing Colorado. I kind of like to say Vegas has like a little Pittsburgh Steelers syndrome, in the sense that they probably downplay their opponents and look forward to the next round. But, I'm reaching a bit there. But yeah, this team is very similar to the Islanders. I feel like if the Islanders did win, I probably would go with the Islanders, just because I think the Islanders do have a superstar center in Barzal, and I feel like that would be the difference. But yeah, no smart hockey fan would have picked Montreal at the start of this. And yeah, if you were to go back 2 months ago, tell me this is what it was going to be, I'm like, you're messing with me. This isn't true.
The fact that the Habs were in the playoffs at all, and the fact that they made it through the Leaf series and beyond. I mean, to credit the Habs, their penalty kill in the postseason has been the best throughout the playoffs, and it's been over 90% in all their series. So that has been a really frustrating part for a lot of the teams that they played, namely Winnipeg and namely the Vegas Golden Knights, because once the power play stopped working and they were forced to play 5-on-5 for a lot of those 2 series, I feel like not being able to do anything. Well, if you're the other team playing the Habs, not being able to do anything with the man up is really jarring, especially for a team like Vegas that relies a lot on the offense. And yeah, I agree with Frank too, because Frank said that they went. I love Robin Leonard, and I think that he's a phenomenal goalie. But look at what the Islanders did in the coming off an 8-0 game 5. They doubled down with Semyon Varlamov for game 6, and that won them. That ended up doing, ended up being the right call, and it extended their series to 7. Whereas the Golden Knights, I think, made a little bit of a panic mode switch, even though I think they're both great goalies. Leonard goes in, it changes the dynamic of the team a little bit, and they didn't end up getting it done.
But I thought it the other way. I thought after the Fleury fiasco, when he lost the puck off his stick in between his legs and the Canadiens tied it up, and then he went with Leonard after that game and won, he should have stood with them. Instead, he went with Fleury, and then Fleury lost. I'm not a big fan of alternating, regardless of how good both goalies are. Once you get into the playoffs, it's all about who's hot. Whether you're a forward, a defenseman, a goaltender. So Leonard won that big game, got them back tied up at 2. Why not start him again? And then if he loses, maybe you go with Fleury. Instead, he went with the name instead of the skill at that particular moment. It sort of bit them in the ass. And I think that was their downfall, was the flip-flopping. Also, when you're only 9% efficient on your power play, it made Montreal look really good. They're at, 93% efficient right now. Yeah. Remember that last series against the Knights, they had no power play. I don't think their PK is going to be as successful against the Lightning as it was against Vegas.
Yeah, I mean, look at the star power Tampa has. You could all complain about how over the cap they are. I mean, let's be honest. I think any team would expose that loophole if they could. But yeah, this is going to be difficult for the Habs to stop if they're going to win. We'll get to our predictions later. But yeah, that's easily the biggest surprise, the fact that they made it this far. So now, biggest disappointment, I think I'm going to have to go with the Toronto Maple Leafs on this one. I mean, everyone thinks this was the year for them to at least make the conference final or something. That North Division was practically set up for them to succeed. And for them to just choke the way they did in the first round. And we just gave the Habs a lot of credit. Not going to take away from them. The Habs did what they needed to do. But yeah, Toronto just, for lack of a better term, just shit the bed.
100%. And it's not even the fact that they blew the 3-1 series lead, right? Going into this playoff series, like you said, it was built for a Canadian team to come out of the division. But when the NHL lined this up last year, you have to be thinking, right, that they're looking at the records and looking at the cumulative, the last few years. They're thinking it's Winnipeg or it's Toronto, right? And maybe if lightning strikes, pun intended, Edmonton, but you kind of have to laugh because they were favored over 80% according to the Athletics polling, or the way that they crunched the statistic for that series, favored over 80%, and they blew the 3-1 series lead. That game 6 in overtime is exactly where they lost that series because Montreal swung the momentum hard through the last couple of games that they clawed out of that one. And I mean, Tavares, Matthews, Marner, Nylander. The amount of offense that they have could compare to Tampa, but the mental fortitude, right? The ability to dig deep and, kind of dig yourselves out of playoff mistakes. They don't have that. Clearly, they're lacking. They're kind of the inverse Islanders, where they're all star power and skill, and almost no grit, no physicality, and none of that that grit factor. They don't have that at all.
To be fair, Frank, you probably have no idea what we're referencing there.
But keep going.
Yeah. John Tavares was gone after that game 1. If I don't remember that. I mean, losing him was huge, but that being said, they still have the star power. They still have Austin Matthews. They still have Mitch Marner.
They had more than enough.
Yeah.
More than enough.
Yeah, now they very well could lose Hyman, the free agency. I wouldn't be surprised if they trade Mitch Marner because he's basically like a NHL
dead man walking.
He's basically an NHL Ben Simmons in a way. I mean,
Jack, and Frank, I sincerely hope they overreact and blow the whole thing up. It would be hilarious for me to watch.
In the words of a urinating tree, Toronto, if you don't win with this core, just delete the franchise.
Delete the franchise.
Now, see, I think as bad as Toronto played, for me personally, the biggest disappointment was Edmonton. I expected them just to do better to come out. I mean, how many years are we going to see McDavid have great regular seasons, and even though, and especially this year when it was a little different with the breakdown, and then just not advance upward, and it's always the goaltending. I mean, him and Draisaitl are together, and they just can't get it together, and it's a shame. I hate to say it, reminds me a lot about Lundqvist, but the difference with that is the Rangers did win playoff series and did get to a final
Rangers
with them.
Made runs, yeah,
they made runs. They had good seasons. They just, for whatever reason, Edmonton just can't get going with the best player in the NHL. You just watch him game after game. I was looking for Oiler games on NBCSN or whatever streaming I could get, and he dominated. And then they just got shut down. And he's a one pony team. It's no good. I don't know how long.
What do you think they do, Frank? What do you think Edmonton's got to do to address that?
I think they have to, believe it or not, do what Buffalo needs to do. They need to show their top guy that they're serious and make that big splash. Whatever it might be, I don't know. I'm not saying who needs to be moved. They need better goaltending. They need somewhere else for McDavid to play with. Late in that series, they put him and Draisaitl together, which kind of depleted the rest of their team because it just didn't work out as well as they had hoped. It made it easier for the other team to play against them because now they had the two best guys on the ice, and you put your best guys all the time against them. And the other three lines, they were getting outplayed all the time.
Yeah.
So they need a lot more work than I think people want to admit to. And Edmonton, over the last couple of seasons, made a lot of horrible trades that put them in the spot that they're in now.
The Islanders thank Oilers for their top line.
I'm sure they do.
Beauvillier, Barzal, and
Ryan Eberle straight up for Ryan Eberle, holy cow. Ryan Strome straight up for Jordan Eberle.
Hey,
how about that?
Say right? Stromer's doing well at the Garden.
But he's played very well. So, those mistakes though, you look back at all those players today and you're like, well, they were all playing with McDavid one time or another. What happened? So I don't know where they turned, but to me, absolutely the biggest disappointment was the Oilers.
Yeah, I mean, they almost snuck by us. Good on you, Frank. Curse you, Toronto,
for literally won no playoff games with McDavid and Draisaitl.
Yeah, I mean, everyone was just had their magnifying glass on the Leafs that we completely forgot about the Oilers. So good catch there. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what the Oilers do from here. Ken Holland's their GM. He's won Stanley Cups with the Red Wings, but that's hockey's much different now than it was then. So yeah, I think even he made some comments like a few months ago, like eventually they're going to have to make some kind of big moves. Otherwise, Connor McDavid could very well be like the way Jack Eichel is now, like gotta blow it up all over again.
Sure.
Yeah. All right, so let's get into this matchup, gentlemen. First, let's go with the underdog. What does Frank? I'll let you go first. What does Montreal have to do in order to win this series?
Continue to do well on the special teams. Carey Price has to outplay Tampa's goalie, which is going to be really hard to do. He's on fire right now. He's got 4 shutouts.
Yeah.
Grit-wise, I think they're going to be all right, and it's going to come down to a battle of fourth lines. Montreal is a really solid 4-line team. Vegas is, but I think overall, I like Montreal's 4 lines. Not Vegas, excuse me, Tampa Bay. But I still like their setup. I'm still thinking Tampa Bay is going to win it, but I don't think this is going to be a 4-1 kind of series. I'm calling this in 6 games, maybe 7. I just think Montreal does have that fight. They're right there. Tampa Bay's got a lot riding on it. The defending champs, you always want to win that 2 in a row and have that dynasty talk come up. So I think their grit, I think their top players have to keep playing top, and I think Price is going to have to stand on his head.
Yeah, I know. I completely agree with that. And I'm probably a little biased because I just watched the Islanders take Tampa to 7. But what I saw, particularly in that 7th game, because the Islanders I didn't feel that they played Pajot confirmed that he had multiple injuries and he needs surgery. He was pretty much muted by the time the series rolled around. Same with a lot of their offense. But I look at Montreal and I look at the way that they've advanced. And I have to think that if the Islanders were able to take the Tampa Bay Lightning, defending Cup champion, repeat seeking Lightning to 7 games in the conference final, I think that Montreal's more than capable of winning this series. And I'll tell you why, because they've continued to play physically frustrating. They kind of, so when I say that, I mean that what the Canadiens and Islanders do is they kind of start the game and let the team in front of them, they'll give them chances, but they'll control everything to the outside or give them, a really block shot with a bunch of traffic in front. They'll let the team kind of pour out a little bit of juice, let the chances come, and then obviously capitalize when they make either a mistake, a bad pass, a turnover, whatever it might be. Montreal does that with their blue line, and yes, they continue to hold that very strong 93-point-something percent PK. That's a huge part of it because Tampa makes their living on this power play. So if they can continue to frustrate them offensively, get that big physical structure in front, keep everything off to the outside, and yes, Carey Price has to outduel Andrei Vasilevsky. Yeah. That is a more than tall order. Vasilevsky has been probably the undisputed best goalie in the world for the last couple of years. So that's a tall order in that of itself. But Price he's shown that he's turning the clock back this playoffs a lot. And his performance, I think it's very fitting ultimately that Price and Vasilevsky meet in the final, because I do think they're the two best goalies in this whole playoffs. So yes, can Price outduel Vasilevsky? Maybe not every night. As long as the penalty kill maintains what they've been doing to like a more or less, 5% difference, that would be another key. And then just continue to play the young kids. Cole Caulfield, that kid, Nick Suzuki, 2 of their main drivers on offense, just bury the opportunities when they come. And they could probably take this series from Tampa from I would say probably a mentally more susceptible team since they've already won. And now the pressure is on them to repeat. Montreal has no pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Tampa Bay isn't coming off, a long rest. I mean, not saying, that's, a deciding factor. I mean, look in 1994, the Canucks had a long rest, but the Rangers still beat them in 7 games. But the thing is, Tampa's worn down after playing a Islanders team that took them to the brink, played a very physical style. And look at Nikita Kucherov. I mean, he says he's not hurt, but I definitely think he's got a broken rib or something. He's just not going to, obviously you're not going to admit it. Otherwise, guys like Brendan Gallagher or Shea Weber will target him, sneak in a few cross checks, be like, all right, get out of here. So yeah, Tampa Bay. Montreal needs to be physical and continue to wear down the Tampa Bay Lightning the same way the Islanders did. If they've been paying any attention to that series, which it's probably hard considering, they got their own series at the time to worry about. But
they'll be looking at the tape.
Yeah, they'll look at the tape, be like, okay, we play a similar brand of hockey to these guys. We just gotta build off of what they left us, I guess.
When Montreal upsets Tampa, they should credit the Islanders and the footage from the conference final as to how they helped overcome. Because if they do it, I think that'll be a big part of it.
All right. Now let's go to Tampa. What do they have to do to win? Which I think this is very simple. Just keep doing what they're doing. Roll out the superstars, that the 4 lines that they have, which are filled with phenomenal hockey players. Tyler Johnson is on their 4th line. That is saying something. And, obviously they got great defensive core. Vasilevsky is a stud. I mean,
I will say this. Because this is what Tampa did in the final series, the conference final series that kind of cost them and kind of ended up stretching it out. Guys like Sergachev, guys like Pat Maroon, those 4th line grinder guys for Tampa, they're susceptible to taking dumb penalties. And the Islanders really goaded a lot out of Mikhail Sergachev, particularly. He's a lot younger. Ironically, Sergachev was a Montreal Canadian at one point before he got traded. So that's a little bit of a narrative that could play into this too. But Sergachev, Maroon, those guys are susceptible to dumb penalties. It could end up biting them if Montreal guys like, did you see Corey Perry coming up and just giving Maroon and Sergachev a bit of the business? That'll excuse me, that'll be a big factor for Tampa in terms of them staying out of the box, because their guys, they have a lot of grit as well and attitude, and it's cost them a little bit in the Islander series. Even though the Islander power play is awful, Montreal's power play is better. It's not as bad. So it'll end up costing them if they continue to take those penalties they did in the conference final.
Yeah, they gotta stay disciplined. Sorry, Frank, go on.
Yeah,
No, I think Montreal has to find a way to stop Braden Point. 14 goals in 18 playoff games. I think he scored a goal in his last 10 games overall now.
No, he didn't score in game 7.
He didn't go, so it stopped at 9. He's definitely someone they're going to have to target and keep an eye on, because he's scoring big goals at big moments, carrying the team. And if Kucherov is out or not at 100% capacity, it's all going to fall on him to continue the way he's played. And he carries that team. He's been playing very well. So they're really going to have to look at him. He's a spark plug on that team right now. And the whole team follows him. He's got that playoff magic that they all talk about. He got hot at the right moment. And that's what I was talking about. It all sometimes comes down to the hot player or the hot team. And Tampa Bay is bringing a lot of momentum into this. 7-game win or not, they all had 3 or 4 days off to rest now. Other than Kucherov, I believe everyone's pretty much healthy. I think it's going to be a great series.
Yeah, and game was I could say, if Tampa Bay does go on to win, which a lot of people are expecting, I think Braden Point, you got to give him the Conn Smythe. You don't put up those kind of numbers and don't get rewarded for it somehow. Well, assuming they win. The guy who set the record, Reggie Leach, they didn't win the finals that year, but you know what I mean.
Right.
Absolutely.
He literally set, I don't know if it was an NHL record, but he set a franchise record for most consecutive games, and I think it ended with 9 or 10.
9.
Until 9. There you go.
The record is 10 from Reggie Leach.
Oh,
as far as playoffs go.
So I thought he might have tied it, but he got to 9, which is still that. And the most dangerous thing about Tampa too, they don't even need a good chance. They just need any shot. Any shot from any one of those forwards can go in, and there's a good chance that it might. It's ridiculous.
And one last thing, games that are played in Montreal, Tampa wants to win on the road there. I think they got to score early. Say what you will, I don't think has Canada, increased the seating capacity yet?
No, I think they're still under 50%.
Okay, well, Habs fans are still known to be loud. They're known to be crazy. They got to silence that arena somehow. The best way to do that, set the tone early, score first.
And Montreal, when they score first, they show that they can control the pace of the game. So who scores first in these games is going to be very telling to how the pace of the game will go.
All right, guys, let's get into our predictions. Frank, you want to go first?
I called it before. I'm calling Tampa in 6. I just think they're going to have a lot more momentum. I think they will be scoring first. And if they don't score first, they have the power to come back. I don't think Montreal has faced a complete team the way the Lightning are on all ends of the ice, offense, defense, goaltending. Definitely a tough battle for them. Not that they can't overcome it. I just think Tampa Bay is going to have too much for them.
Yeah. No, I have to. My brain, the hockey brain, obviously, you can't bet against Tampa. You can't bet against the defending champs who have just managed to get to the second straight final. And yeah, it's a tall order for Montreal. Can they do it? Yes. My heart wants to say the Habs do it in 6, but my brain is telling me that the Lightning take care of it in 6. They'll probably win their second cup in Montreal.
Yeah, I too am picking Lightning in 6, which obviously now we know it's going to happen. We keep picking against Montreal. They end up, proving us wrong. They've done the previous 3 rounds. So yeah, if any Habs fans, listening to this, I guess you can take
nothing new to them.
Yeah, you can take this with a grain of salt. We've all been wrong the previous 3 rounds, but yeah,
I would love to be wrong. I would love.
It would be cool to see. I hold nothing against the Habs, but like you said, brains.
Price.
Yeah, my heart says Habs, my brain says Lightning. So, any thoughts before we wrap up, guys?
I wanted to ask. I'm curious, Frank. I'm curious because I touched this with Jack. This has nothing to do with the playoffs at all. I just could. Now we're here. The Rangers, right? because you got to start thinking off season now. They got Gallant. They got their guy. You know, shelf life be what it may, just within his last couple of jobs, that's irrelevant. That's not important because they got the best available coach to them. Are the Rangers in the playoffs next year, and why are they in the playoffs? Because I think that they'll be back.
Me too.
With the same lineup, they're not in the playoffs next year.
You don't think so?
The coach is not going to improve their fourth line deficiencies. It's not going to improve their center problems. You know something? Yeah, I don't see the Rangers need. How do I say it?
Grit.
Kravtsov that came up is not a fourth line player. He's going to have to get moved up somehow. They have a lot of problems with the center position. Not that they're bad. They need a strong fourth line. That's what the NHL is right now. They don't have that. Rooney was all right. Howden was a failure at center.
Ugh.
And you cannot a coach is great, but he's just the starting point. I even wrote about that last week. Now Drury's hard work really begins. How do you get the team that Gallant wants on the ice with Gallant? Because Gallant can only coach the 23 guys that Drury gives him.
Right.
Good or bad. Good or bad. You know what happens with Buchnevich? What happens? You know, can Hedl step up again? Lafreniere, I think it's going to be phenomenal next season. And I like what Gallant said. Everyone's got a shot to make any line. The kids don't have their opportunities. That's all well and good. They have a lot of third and fourth line players. Gauthier, Di Giuseppe, Howden, Rooney. It needs to get all ironed out. You need better players to play with Kravtsov if he's going to be on the third or fourth line. You need a strong center.
Gotcha.
You need 4 lines. Look at the playoffs. Look at these teams right now. 4 solid lines up and down, guys. The Rangers don't have that. So if you don't improve on that, can just a coach change and find what were the Rangers out? 5 wins? It's hard to do. You know, I mean, he's good and they're going to want to play hard for him. But I don't know if one coach can do it. Like just a coach.
My follow-up to that is, what does the package look like? Because I am convinced Eichel goes to either the Rangers or Vegas. What does the package look like if you're the Rangers? If you're well, it's not even Gordon. I was about to say Jeff Gordon. If you're Chris Drury, and you're on the phone with Buffalo, excuse me.
You guys are gonna hate me. I am not the biggest Eichel fan out there.
Really?
I'm indifferent to him. I'm
not saying that he's a bad player. He's not Panarin. Like when the Rangers were looking for Panarin, I wanted Panarin. I like Eichel. I think he's good. I think he plays really well. But now, do you want to give up a Kakko and a Hedl or maybe a Buchnevich? I don't know. I'm not saying it'd be bad, but you know, you spent these last couple of seasons developing. Use Hedl really quick as an example. He didn't want to get sent back home. He wanted to go to the AHL to get better. He did. He came up. I think he's the epitome of when you want to see a homegrown player develop, and he's right where we want him now. I thought he's taken faceoffs pretty well. He plays a great two-way game. It might be a little different on the Gallant, but on the Quinn, he played a great two-way game. Now you're going to take him and package him with maybe a Kakko, which I think everyone's giving up on him a little too early, and Buchnevich because of his RFA status, to bring in Eichel. I'm of 2 minds about it. It might work with a new head coach and a whole fresh start theory, but I think anything that has Eichel in it, fans are going to bitch that they lost someone they really wanted to keep.
Yeah,
so it's half dozen of the other kind of a deal. If he comes to New York, God, I hope he plays lights out. I would love to see it. I think anywhere he goes, it's going to be better for him. I think he's just burnt in an organization that did nothing for him the last 5 years. Nothing at all.
100 less than nothing. He didn't have much of anything to work. It was him, and then it became Rasmus Dahlin when he got here, and then Dahlin's already taken steps back.
And now Buffalo has the first overall pick. Who do you even take out of this draft?
In a paper thin draft where the kids haven't even played like standard hockey over the last year. So this entire draft is more or less like
this is the biggest crapshoot in the NHL draft history.
Yeah. It's horrible.
Yeah,
it's horrible.
Yeah, and
that's why I think the Rangers are going to trade the 15th pick. To be honest, I think they're going to throw that into a deal.
And that would
be Eichel,
smart.
maybe not. The 15th round pick is the Rangers have been really successful with their last 3 drafts. Okay, Andre Miller, Kravtsov, Hedl, Kakko, Lafreniere. The luck is going to run out. Let's all be realistic about that. Not every pick is going to be
right
where everyone stays in the NHL. We know how that goes,
especially this year.
trading 15 is not a horrible. It probably gets you a decent NHL ready player now. You might want to throw that into a deal with Eichel, and maybe you can hold on to one of the kids. But Buffalo's going to want the world to trade their number one.
Yeah.
But he's number one from a couple of years ago. And he hasn't really, as great as he is, and he's their captain. They never gave him the talent around him to really show what he can do. So I think he just wants to go to a team that can compete. That's what I'm saying. So I think he just wants to go where he can compete, wherever it may be. Except for
I'll tell you, I have a
yeah. I mean,
sorry, go ahead, Jack. Go ahead.
So, I was gonna say, I personally I won't be upset if the Rangers don't get Eichel, because when I look at the roster and like the type of players we have, he's not the type of player we necessarily need. They need grit. They need strength. The only guy you could really argue on that's on the Ranger roster that brings grit and strength is Chris Kreider. And, he doesn't do that every night. But yeah, I think the Rangers, if they make, add a little bit of grit, a little bit of strength, I think they do make the playoffs next year, but they get bounced in the first round. But you know what? That's fine. Jury said the playoffs.
Process, that's good.
Yeah, Jury said, the playoffs are not a mandate. But, that is the goal for next year. Next year's the year for them, go to the playoffs, get your ass kicked a little bit, and, grow from there. So,
yeah.
I agree. I honestly think, like Frank said, it's a really good idea to trade the pick this year just because of how much of a crapshoot it is. Personally, I think they take either one of Kakko or Lafreniere, one of their, probably not Laf. It would probably be a Kakko or a similar type of guy who's had a few years, hasn't necessarily maybe didn't line up to their expectations in year whatever. They take this year's first, maybe next year's first, one of those guys, whatever. I think that Eichel finds his way on this team because the grit that they need will come cheap. I mean, those guys you hand out maybe a couple, 2-3 years at maybe $2 million per. I mean, in terms of the cap, that's peanuts. Plus you reinforce your center depth. Excuse me. You got a little bit more punch. And I genuinely think that Eichel's one of the best centers in the league. Like you said, he's just never had the ability to showcase that talent. You put him, not that they would put him on the same line, but a power play with Eichel, Panarin, Fox,
Yeah, there's a lot of power. There's a lot of potential.
Gives them a lot of
potential there. The problem with that is the stories or the rumors that I've read just through Twitter, like everyone else, is that Quinn didn't give a lot of his younger players a fair opportunity. I mean, that's just things that you hear and read about. And if that should be true, you might owe it to Kakko to give him another season.
I thought Kakko played much better, as the season went on.
Absolutely.
He became a two-way player. Now I see what people mean when they say he's similar to Barkov. When he's confident, he plays well on both sides of the ice. When he's confident, he's getting involved in plays. He's making plays on the boards. He'll force turnovers. He might not always put up a point, but, his point totals aren't sexy. But you know what? He's doing what he needs to do. And I think next year, I don't think he'll average a point per game next year, but you know what? I think he'll put up pretty good numbers next year.
But see, that's the problem with anyone the Rangers consider trading. Anyone you trade might look like it's a bad move. And, so Drury has to be real careful. He made his first big move, big splash, getting Gallant. But now when you start trading a Kakko, a Hedl, a Buchnevich, he's going to take a lot of heat for it, depending on who he trades and what's in the package. But if you want to get better, you got to trade a top 6 guy.
It's
trading in the bottom, other than a Hedl, where I really want to see him trade. You're not going to trade Kraftstov because he showed that he can play and he could spark players around him, which a lot of guys didn't recognize. That Kraftstov made a weak fourth line a lot better because of his skill and what he can do. I look forward to seeing that in a whole season now. So there aren't a lot of players that the Rangers could really move that Buffalo would be interested in. So it's a tough decision. It's a tough move. I can see why he wants to do it. You're not going to make it makes no sense to go into the season with the same team that didn't make the playoffs. Let's be clear about that.
Yeah. And one last thoughts from me before we wrap up here. I think the guys who are in the danger zone, if they're on the Rangers roster or in their farm system, in danger of being traded, are probably their defensive prospects. Well, other than Adam Fox, Keandre Miller, maybe Nils Lundqvist, they might be thinking, all right, we're pretty good defensive wise. Maybe we could sacrifice one of these guys to get an Eichel or someone like that.
Sure. It's going to cost them something like that.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Matt,
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much. Frank,
It was great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Frank, for coming on. If you want to see more of Frank's work, check out Empire Sports Media. Is that right, Frank? Empire Sports Media?
That's correct.
Yep.
Empire
And
Sports Media, Forever Blue Shirts, Ranger Proud on Twitter and Facebook. I'm even nice to the Islander fans once in a while. Well, mainly just for Matt, but you know.
he's one of 7 Islander fans we like. Well, anyway.
Exactly.
Thanks very much for listening, everyone. I don't know when this will be uploaded. Maybe right now it's before game 1. We'll either upload this right before game 1 or
definitely before game 3. That much we can guarantee.
Oh. All right. So who knows? When people listen to this, someone's already gonna have a 1-0 series lead, but by the time most people listen to it. But anyway, thanks for coming on, guys.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
You got it. This is JackKnife alongside Big Red and Frank Curto. Have a wonderful night, everyone.